I still remember that Tuesday as if it burned itself into my memory. The kind of day that starts off like any other, with the smell of breakfast wafting through the house and the sound of the mail clattering in the mailbox, but ends with the world twisting in a way you never saw coming. I was at my daughter Clara's house, folding laundry and humming softly, when the phone rang with a scream that froze me mid-breath. I didn't recognize the voice at first. It belonged to Clementine, my granddaughter. She was 17, the calmest, sharpest mind in the room most days. Yet in that single moment, her voice was sharp, raw, and urgent. She hadn't even cried. That was the strangest part. Her knuckles were white as she gripped her laptop, and her eyes were wide but steady. "Mom," she said, her voice slicing through the quiet kitchen. The tuition deposit bounced. I checked the legacy account. There's only $42 left. I froze. $42. The fund that was supposed to secure her future, the one my late husband and Clara had poured everything into over the years, was gone, mostly gone. My heart pounded, and Clara's face went pale as she dropped a bowl she had just washed. It shattered across the tile, sharp fragments catching the light, like the cracks forming in our family's life. I could feel the air in the room thicken, the kind of heaviness that grips your chest and won't let go. Desmond, my son-in-law, the man who claimed to be the pillar of our family, was nowhere to be found. He had taken the money, every last dollar, and left, leaving only the faint smell of expensive cologne and arrogance behind. My daughter sank into a chair, sobbing, while I clutched Clementine's shoulder, trying to ground her in the storm we didn't yet understand. And then I noticed her calm. That sharp, calculating calm that always made me proud of her, even as a little girl. "Don't cry, Mom. Don't worry, Grandma," she whispered, her eyes catching the blue glow of the laptop screen. "He thinks he's the only one who knows how to move money. He forgot who set up his home network. I will handle it." Her words were quiet, but the weight behind them made the room shift. I looked at her, really looked, and for the first time that day, I felt a flicker of hope. Not because the money was gone, but because she had a plan. A plan that neither Desmond nor anyone else could see coming. If you've ever trusted someone only to have that trust shattered, you know the ache that grips you. And if you're watching this now, I want you to do one thing: don't scroll away. Stories like this don't just happen to other people. They happen to families who think they're safe, and they happen fast. Subscribe now to Grandma Revenge Echoes so you never miss a warning that could protect someone you love. Clementine turned the laptop toward me, her fingers moving almost invisibly across the keys. "He didn't just take my college fund," she said. "He's been borrowing from others, too. The people who trusted him. He thought he was clever." At that moment, I realized this wasn't just theft. It was a test, a challenge, and Clementine was already 2 steps ahead. I glanced at her, and she caught my eye, giving the tiniest, most confident smile. "I've already started," she said softly, almost like a whisper meant only for me, but everyone watching would feel it. The girl who should have been powerless wasn't. If you think your family could never be tested like this, think again. And if you want to learn how justice can be served when the odds are stacked, hit subscribe. Don't risk missing the next move, because if this story had ended differently, we might still be paying the price. Like, share, and comment now. Tell me, what would you have done if your trust had been betrayed this way? That's when I knew the storm was coming. Not a storm of tears or shouting, but one that would shake foundations, expose lies, and leave no one untouched. And at the eye of that storm stood a 17-year-old girl with the mind of an adult and the courage of a soldier. She had already set the pieces in motion. And in a house that had been betrayed, justice had a new architect. I've seen a lot of people in my lifetime, and the ones who talk the loudest are often the ones hiding the deepest truths. Desmond was a master of appearances. He didn't just walk into a room. He announced himself with polished shoes, tailored suits, and a laugh that filled every corner, demanding attention. He drove a black SUV that gleamed so brightly it could be mistaken for a mirror on wheels, and every Sunday, without fail, he polished it until it shined like new. To anyone looking from the outside, he was successful, confident, untouchable. But the truth, as I had learned over decades of watching people, rarely matched the surface. Clara, my daughter, had given everything she had for this family. She worked double shifts at the hospital as head nurse, often missing meals or rest, barely finding time to breathe between patients, paperwork, and home responsibilities. Every paycheck she brought home, every extra shift she volunteered for, went straight into securing our granddaughter's future and keeping the household afloat. And all the while, Desmond managed the finances. Or at least, that's what he called it. I remember one evening, sitting on the porch and sipping tea while watching him strut past the driveway, phone in hand, laughing at some private joke. He had the kind of confidence that made people believe he had earned everything he had. But I had learned early to read the spaces between the words, the hesitation in a glance, the arrogance that hid fear. Desmond controlled the money, but what he really controlled was everyone's perception of him. And Clara, blinded by years of loyalty and love, barely saw it. Clementine, however, saw more than we often gave her credit for. Even at 17, she had the kind of mind that spotted inconsistencies, patterns, and secrets. While most teenagers were concerned with social media likes or school assignments, she understood the weight of our family's legacy fund. It wasn't just numbers on a screen. It was my late husband's life insurance, the savings of a decade of overtime, and the promise of an education that could change her life forever. Every cent represented trust, sacrifice, and hope. And Desmond had treated it like it was his personal plaything. The warning signs had been there for years, subtle but undeniable. The way he glanced at the bills with a hint of annoyance, the casual way he redirected funds under the guise of investment opportunities, the quiet smirk when he talked about making things happen without including Clara in the decision-making. No one wanted to confront it directly. Friends would nod politely when he bragged about his purchases. Neighbors admired his car, his suits, his charm. But I had lived long enough to know that charm can be a weapon, and wealth can be a disguise for cruelty. And yet, even with the pieces scattered across months of observation, it wasn't until the fund vanished that the true depth of his deception became undeniable. Clara had been running herself into exhaustion for years, pouring everything into keeping their family afloat while Desmond maintained the illusion of control. Meanwhile, Clementine watched from the sidelines, quietly noting every digital signature, every transferred dollar, every pattern that suggested he believed himself untouchable. I remember the nights she stayed awake, laptop glowing, her fingers dancing over the keys with calm precision, uncovering traces of her father's financial manipulation. It was almost like watching a hawk circling above, patient and calculating. Desmond had never considered that the person he underestimated most might not only understand the system but could outsmart him entirely. And that realization was terrifying, not for Clementine, but for him when the time came. Desmond's arrogance wasn't just in his financial exploits. It was in the way he interacted with people, expecting loyalty, expecting compliance, believing his role as the man of the house excused every lie, every betrayal. He had built a life on the assumption that no one would question him, that his family would bend to his desires, and that his carefully cultivated charm would shield him from scrutiny. Yet, as I watched Clementine's quiet determination, I began to feel a different kind of satisfaction. For all his bravado, the cracks in his armor were growing, and they were invisible to everyone but the ones who truly cared. Watching him flaunt his wealth, his success, and his self-assuredness was almost unbearable at times. I could see Clara, exhausted and heartbroken, trying to maintain a smile for our granddaughter while masking the weight of betrayal that had finally revealed itself. It hurt to witness her pain, knowing that the man she had trusted for decades could be so callous. But even in that heartbreak, there was a spark, a reminder that justice isn't always immediate, but it has a way of catching up with those who forget that no lie lasts forever. And this is where the story begins to challenge the assumptions of everyone watching. Desmond believed he controlled everything: the money, the family, the narrative. But he forgot the most important things. He forgot that Clara had raised a daughter with both intelligence and courage. He forgot that a family's strength is not measured by bank accounts but by the people who refuse to be broken. And he underestimated the quiet resolve of a girl who had already started plotting the reckoning he would one day face. If you've ever known someone who seemed perfect on the outside but left a trail of destruction behind, you know the weight of what we faced. Families like ours don't often speak about these things openly, but the truth is universal. Many of us have seen someone take advantage of love, trust, or loyalty, and the results can be devastating. That's why it's so important to pay attention, to watch closely, and to learn from the stories of those who refuse to let betrayal define them. Now, before you continue watching, I need to ask you something. If this were happening in your home, to someone you love, would you be ready? Don't scroll past this story. Subscribe now, because knowledge is power, and missing the next step could cost someone their future. Share this story, like it, and join the conversation. Tell us in the comments. Have you ever seen a family member take advantage of trust like this? Because here's the truth. Desmond was a master of deception, but he had overlooked the most dangerous force of all, Clementine's determination, and the quiet wisdom of a grandmother who had been paying attention all along. It started with a notification on Clementine's laptop, simple and unassuming, but it hit like a hammer. The tuition deposit had bounced. I still remember the sound of her voice, calm yet edged with steel, cutting through the kitchen's morning quiet. "Mom," she said, her words deliberate, measured. "The legacy fund, it's almost gone. There's only $42 left." I felt my knees weaken. $42. The fund that had been Clara's sweat, my late husband's careful planning, the insurance meant to secure our granddaughter's future, it had vanished. For a moment, the room seemed to hold its breath. Clara's hand shook as she reached for the laptop, and I could see her body stiffen with the kind of disbelief that feels like it could split you in two. Then the bowl shattered. It slipped from her hands, hitting the linoleum floor with a sharp crash, spilling its contents across the tiles. I can still hear it in my head, the sound of pasta scattering like scattered dreams. Clara's shoulders slumped as she tried to process what had happened, her exhaustion finally giving way to raw grief. Her eyes, usually so bright even after long hospital shifts, were dull and haunted. I remember standing there, gripping the edge of the counter, trying to breathe through the panic that threatened to overwhelm me. Desmond's betrayal wasn't a story in a newspaper or a distant rumor. It was real, tangible, and devastating. He had siphoned money from the very account meant to protect his own daughter, and now he had disappeared, leaving nothing but a trail of digital fingerprints and a family in ruins. Clementine, as always, remained calm. Her face, pale and focused, reflected the glow of her laptop. "He didn't just touch the college fund," she said quietly, almost to herself. "He's been moving money from other accounts too. Clients, investments, he's leaving a trail everywhere." Her words didn't tremble. They didn't cry for the loss. They calculated, assessed, and analyzed. While Desmond thought he was untouchable, Clementine was already steps ahead, tracking every transaction, every digital footprint he had left behind. When Desmond finally walked in that evening, he didn't knock. He didn't greet us with even a shred of remorse. Instead, he strolled through the door with that self-satisfied swagger he always wore, smelling of expensive bourbon and perfume that did not belong to Clara. He threw his keys on the counter, a gesture of dominance, and said, "It's my house. I've earned this. I'm done playing the family man while you're stuck at the hospital. I found someone who appreciates me." The words hit like a blow. And then came the name, Sloan. A 24-year-old he described as an aspiring lifestyle curator, who apparently required a $150,000 investment to start a boutique in Florida. He packed a suitcase he had stashed away weeks ago, laughed when Clara threatened legal action, and drove off without a backward glance. Clara sank into a chair, trembling, the weight of the betrayal pressing her down. I could feel her grief as if it were my own. And yet, Clementine sat beside her, her small hand resting lightly on my daughter's arm, offering a quiet anchor amidst the storm. She wasn't crying. She wasn't angry. Her eyes, sharp and calculating, tracked every detail, every pattern, every opportunity. "Don't worry," she whispered. "He thinks he's clever. He forgot who knows his network. I will handle it." The kitchen smelled of spilled pasta, fear, and something more intangible, anticipation. The room that had always been warm and familiar had transformed into a stage where the first act of a long reckoning had just concluded. We sat there, breathless, watching the remnants of trust and security scattered across the floor, while Clementine plotted quietly, invisibly, a strategy that no one, not even Desmond, could anticipate. It was in these moments that I realized the full depth of Desmond's betrayal. This wasn't a fleeting act of selfishness. It was calculated, deliberate, and cruel. He had underestimated the intelligence, courage, and resolve of the very family he believed he could control. And he had ignored the quiet observer who had been watching all along, the one who knew how to turn his own arrogance against him. If you've ever had someone you trusted betray you in a way that leaves your heart hammering and your hands shaking, you understand the sting. And if you're watching this now, don't scroll past. Subscribe now so you don't miss the next move. Because most families never recover from betrayals like this, unless they have someone willing to fight for them. Like, share, comment, tell me, would you have known what to do? Clementine's gaze never wavered from the screen. He's confident because he thinks he's invisible, she said, her tone soft but firm. He doesn't realize I'm already inside the system. Every password he types, every transfer he makes. I see it all. And when he thinks he's untouchable, that's when it will be too late for him. In the silence that followed, we felt the weight of the moment. The end of one chapter and the opening of another. Desmond had left with his fancy suits, his polished SUV, and his illusions of control. But he hadn't accounted for the storm quietly gathering in a 17-year-old's mind, guided by the steady hand of a grandmother who refused to let justice slip away. And that, dear viewers, is where the Betrayal story begins. This isn't where the story turns dark, it's where it turns smart. If you want to see how a family reclaims what was stolen, how cunning and patience can turn betrayal into justice, subscribe now. Don't risk missing the moves that will come next, because in situations like this, knowledge isn't just power, it's survival. The house felt empty in the days after Desmond drove away, yet it was anything but quiet. Clara moved through her routines like a ghost, carrying out tasks with trembling hands, her exhaustion now laced with a quiet despair. But in her bedroom, Clementine transformed into something else entirely. A strategist, a watcher, a force moving silently behind the veil of normal teenage life. She wasn't just staring at a screen. She was dissecting every digital trace her father had left, mapping patterns of transactions, hidden transfers, and unusual behavior. I spent hours observing her, quietly, from the doorway or from the kitchen, pretending to fold laundry while my eyes followed her every move. The laptop's glow reflected in her glasses, revealing a focus so intense it could have sliced through steel. She wasn't playing games, scrolling social media, or texting friends. She was cataloging everything Desmond had touched, noting each misstep, each overreach, each sign of arrogance he thought was invisible. "Grandma," she said one night, her voice calm as she scrolled through a spreadsheet of his transactions. "He's not just foolish with our money. He's been tapping into clients' escrow accounts. He's not only a liar to us, he's a criminal to anyone who trusted him." I felt a chill run down my spine. It wasn't just about our family anymore. It was about all the people he had deceived. Every transfer she traced, every false account he had opened in Sloane's name, became a mark against him. He believed himself untouchable, a man cloaked in charm and money, but Clementine was quietly gathering evidence, building a case that even the law might struggle to ignore. Sloane, the lifestyle curator he had left with, made the job easier. Her social media posts were extravagant, brash, and entirely public. Photos of luxury penthouses, shopping sprees, and champagne toasts that screamed privilege and ignorance. Clementine had catalogued them all, screenshots and timestamps lining her desktop like a map of overconfidence. Every tagged location, every casual brag about their new life painted a picture of arrogance so complete, so naive, that it almost felt cinematic. Desmond believed he had one. He walked through Miami with his chest puffed out, calling Clara occasionally to remind her that he had moved on, laughing when she protested or threatened legal action. He never suspected that Clementine had not only observed his every move but had also anticipated them. Every brag, every careless digital footprint, Every moment he thought himself invisible had been recorded, catalogued, and set aside for the right moment. Clementine's approach was deliberate. She didn't need to strike immediately. She didn't need the satisfaction of confrontation yet. Her patience was her weapon. She watched him make the same mistakes he had always made, trusting appearances over facts, believing in charm over evidence, assuming that no one could see behind the facade he had built so carefully over the years. I watched her as she paused over her keyboard, fingers hovering, eyes scanning lines of code, banking information, and login records. "He thinks he's untouchable," she murmured. "He doesn't realize the moment he assumed I was powerless, he created his own undoing." I couldn't help but marvel at her calm precision. There's a rare sort of intelligence in someone who can be so focused under pressure, who can watch a storm approach and know exactly how to use it without being swept away. Clementine embodied that intelligence. While Desmond celebrated small victories and Sloane flaunted her new life, Clementine was calculating the angles, measuring the weight of his arrogance, preparing the exact moves that would dismantle him without warning. Even as we lived through the quiet days in Virginia, the tension never left the air. It was subtle but constant, the awareness that something was happening, something quiet but inevitable, something that would change everything without a single alarm bell going off until the very moment it was too late. I wanted to warn Clara, to give her hope beyond what she could see. But I realized that sometimes, the best action is patience, and the best teacher is observation. Clementine didn't just see the money or the deception. She saw the man, the patterns of greed, and the mistakes that would become his undoing. And she waited, quietly, strategically, like a chess player several moves ahead of an opponent who believed he was leading the game. If you've ever underestimated someone because of their age or size, because they didn't fit your image of power, you know the danger in that. That's exactly what Desmond had done. And now, we were all witnesses to the quiet build-up of consequences, watching a young mind turn knowledge into leverage, patience into power. This is where you, dear viewer, should take notice. Comment if you see where this is going. Think about it. What would you do if you could see every misstep your adversary had made, every weakness they had ignored? That's the position we were in, and Clementine was poised to act at the perfect moment. And before you continue, consider this. Don't risk missing what's coming. Subscribe to Grandma Revenge Echoes now. This isn't just a story, it's a blueprint of how patience, intelligence, and courage can turn the tables on someone who thinks they are untouchable. Like, share, and comment your thoughts, because when the reckoning comes, you'll want to know how it unfolds. We watched him laugh, unaware that the foundation he believed unshakable was already being dismantled. We observed Sloane flaunt what she didn't earn, completely blind to the consequences looming above her head. And through it all, Clementine waited, a quiet force with a mind honed by years of observation, a girl who had turned patience into an unbreakable weapon. The storm hadn't yet arrived, but it was coming. And when it did, Desmond wouldn't know what hit him. Monday arrived quietly in Virginia, yet according to Clementine's digital map, Miami was about to experience a storm. We could feel it in the tension rising from her bedroom, the quiet hum of monitors and servers orchestrating a plan that Desmond would never anticipate. He believed himself untouchable, and that confidence would become his undoing. Clementine had been patient for weeks, waiting for the perfect window. She had traced every movement, every transaction, every boastful social media post and email. She had catalogued the shell company under Sloane's name, the offshore transfers, the minor clients' escrow accounts he had siphoned to fund his new life. And now, she had everything aligned. "Grandma," she whispered, her fingers moving with surgical precision across her keyboard, "is celebrating tonight. Dinner with his so-called partners. They're closing on a commercial lease for her boutique. This is it, the moment everything collapses." We watched through a live feed Clementine had bridged from his hotel tablet. For 10 minutes, all we heard was the clinking of silverware and Desmond's voice, boasting and laughing, recounting his business savvy to a room full of impressed listeners. He was spinning a story of wealth, power, and mastery, but it was all an illusion, a house built on sand. Then the alerts began. 1, then 2, then a cascade of notifications flashing across his devices. Accounts frozen, transfers flagged, the shell company flagged as suspicious activity. His confident grin faltered. A frown appeared. He tapped at his tablet, his voice rising in confusion. That's not possible. Through the speakers, we heard his panic grow, escalating into frantic muttering. He fumbled with his devices, trying to fix what Clementine had already orchestrated beyond his reach. Every movement he made triggered another alert. Every attempt to stabilize a deal caused the system to reject it. The very money he had stolen, the fund he had thought untouchable, began moving beyond his control. And then the phone rang. The caller ID read his own number, a warning, a digital echo of his own miscalculations. I put it on speaker. "You little brat," he screamed, voice raw, primal. The confident businessman had vanished, replaced by a man cornered, stripped of power, and facing consequences he had never imagined. "What did you do?" "The accounts are frozen. The developers walked out. The boutique, it's ruined." "Sloan." Clementine's voice cut in, steady and calm. "Hi, Dad. You didn't do anything I couldn't track. Every transfer you made was recorded. Every account you touched now has oversight. And since Sloan claims she didn't know where the money came from, law enforcement has seized everything." The screaming in the background was nearly unbearable. Sloan, once eager to flaunt her luxurious lifestyle, now turned on him, shouting accusations and demanding accountability. The sense of control he had clung to so tightly evaporated before our eyes. Every lie, every theft, every assumption of untouchability crumbled simultaneously. I spoke into the phone, my voice calm, deliberate. "Desmond, don't bother coming back to Virginia." Clara changed the locks. "Your clothes? In a dumpster behind the hospital. Enjoy your new life, in the hands of the authorities." Silence followed, thick, heavy, and electrified. Then, a final guttural yell, a slam of the phone, and the end of an era. Desmond's empire of deceit had collapsed, not with force or rage, but with strategy, patience, and a quiet mind several moves ahead of his own. Clara appeared in the doorway, eyes wide, breathing heavy, her grief and fear replaced by a cautious sense of relief. Clementine turned to her mother, her face calm, almost smiling. "It's done, Mom. The money is safe. The accounts are frozen. The law is handling the rest. He underestimated us, and that's his undoing." We could finally breathe. The legacy fund, the trust, the years of sacrifice, all preserved. The injustice had been met with precision, and the satisfaction of seeing someone so arrogant humbled was profound. To anyone watching, here's the truth. Betrayal like this isn't just personal. It can cascade into the lives of anyone who trusts blindly. If you've ever wondered how patience, intelligence, and courage can overturn the plans of someone who believes themselves untouchable, this is the proof. Comment below. Did he deserve this? Could you have orchestrated a counterattack with such precision if you were in Clementine's shoes? And don't wait. Subscribe to Grandma Revenge Echoes now. You want to witness every step of justice, every clever twist, every lesson learned. Like, share, and comment, because watching a wrongdoer face the consequences can teach us more than any cautionary tale. By the time the storm in Miami had settled, Desmond was left with nothing but his arrogance and the echo of the phone call that shattered his world. The people he thought were powerless, my daughter, my granddaughter, and I, had outmaneuvered him completely. Sloan had vanished into the background, clients were alerted, and the stolen money was now under scrutiny. The lesson was clear: never underestimate intelligence combined with patience, and never assume loyalty where vigilance exists. We spent the night quietly, reflecting on the collapse. The house was calm again, the storm having passed, leaving only relief and the faint satisfaction of justice enacted. For years, we had seen him dominate through charm and control, but that dominance had a limit, and Clementine had found it. That night, as I poured a cup of tea and watched Clementine review the final ledgers, I realized the truth of what she had done. She had not only reclaimed what was stolen, but had ensured it could never be taken again. And Desmond, he had learned, the hard way, that some forces cannot be bent, bought, or ignored. The months that followed were slow, steady, and strangely calm. Desmond's recklessness had caught up to him, and the law moved quickly once Clementine had provided the evidence she had quietly amassed. Wire fraud, embezzlement, and grand larceny charges were filed. Court dates came and went, each one stripping him further of the illusion of control he had clung to for decades. The influencer Sloane, once eager to flaunt stolen luxuries, turned in every text, email, and digital trace she possessed to avoid liability. Her betrayal of him was the final nail in the coffin, and the judge, herself a grandmother who understood the pain of losing what should have been safe, showed no mercy. 5 years in prison, seizure of the SUV, restitution to his defrauded clients, and criminal records that would haunt him for life. Meanwhile, back in Virginia, life unfolded differently. The legacy fund, my late husband's insurance, Clara's years of overtime, and the dreams of a 17-year-old girl, was returned in full. Clementine had tracked every digital step, ensuring the court could verify the origins and direct the funds to a trust protected from future misappropriation. Watching her open the thick envelope on the front porch, sunlight glinting off her laptop's aluminum edge, I felt a weight lift from my chest. Clara stepped beside us, exhaustion giving way to a fragile sense of relief. The three of us, the generations tied together not by money, but by love, intelligence, and resilience, stood together as the culmination of weeks of quiet strategy and enduring patience came into focus. Clementine held the check carefully, almost ceremoniously. She didn't boast. She didn't gloat. She simply smiled. "You know, Grandma," she said, watching a blue jay hop along the bird feeder. "He messaged me from the jail's tablet yesterday. Asked if I could be a good daughter and send him money for commissary. Said the other inmates were making life difficult." "And what did you say?" I asked, already knowing the answer. "I didn't say anything," she replied, her eyes reflecting a quiet fire. "I sent a screenshot of my university enrollment confirmation. Told him I'd send a postcard from my first internship. Bridges included, roads not for him." The sense of closure wasn't just about money or punishment. It was about the understanding that peace, vigilance, and preparation could outmatch arrogance, theft, and betrayal every time. The house felt lighter. Clara's skin had a faint glow from stress finally easing. And Clementine, well, she was a teenager again. Her mind still sharp but her heart finally able to relax. To anyone watching, there is a lesson here that goes beyond dollars and cents. Some men, some people, assume they can disrupt families, steal dreams, and leave destruction in their wake without consequence. But intelligence, patience, and courage, especially when paired with observation and understanding, can restore what was lost and ensure it is never threatened again. If you're still watching and not subscribed, you might be missing the tools to recognize betrayal in your own life. Don't let another moment pass without staying informed. Subscribe to Grandma Revenge Echoes now. Like and share this story so others can learn. Vigilance is power, and family is more than finances. Comment below if you've ever felt powerless in the face of betrayal. How would you have acted if you had Clementine's insight? We're a community that learns from these stories. Your thoughts matter, and you'll want to be part of it. As the sun dipped behind the trees that evening, I sat on the porch with Clara and Clementine. Tea in hand, quiet laughter passing between us, I realized the real victory wasn't in punishment, in money recovered, or in seeing Desmond humbled. The true revenge was the restoration of life as it should be. Peace, security, and the knowledge that the next generation was stronger, wiser, and unafraid to act when injustice threatened what they loved. Desmond thought he could take everything from us. He underestimated the quiet force of a family united, the foresight of a girl who learned from watching, and the resolve of a grandmother unwilling to let theft and betrayal go unanswered. The legacy fund was back, yes, but the real treasure was the strength and bond that no money could ever take away. "Handle it," she had said. And oh, how she had.